recently published by Global Business Languages on merger and acquisition case. I studied this case for 5 years, from 2006 to 2010, the merger and acquisition case between Duracell and Nanfu. Duracell belonged to Gillette. Gillette was purchased in 2005 by Procter & Gamble. And Gillette owned Nanfu, which is a Chinese battery company. And they own 40% of the share in China, versus Duracell owned 10% of the share in China. So it was a former inferior competitor. And then later on became the administrator of Nanfu, because they are both now belong to Procter & Gamble. So in this merger and acquisition process that I studied for 5 years, I found 6-tier American-Chinese communication gap for multinational corporations after merger and acquisition. So basically, you can actually expand the Chinese communication style to Asian communication style. So the first one is directness. Americans are direct, comparatively speaking, versus Chinese or Asian people, we're more subtle. Usually we don't say no to you, but in fact we say no to you in some ways.
The only exception is me.
Yeah. So, and the second one is aggressiveness versus modesty. When Americans introduce themselves, they are viewed as being aggressive. If you go to a job interview, you say, "This is what I can do. This is what I can do. I think you need to hire me." Versus Asian people say, "Oh, you know, I really cannot do anything, but it's up to you to make the judgment." Why do they need to hire you if you're so humble, right? Because we are educated to be modest. But you know, when you are trying to sell yourself, you should not be modest, and that can create problem in merger and acquisition. And the third one is courtesy versus command. You know, Asian cultures, we're very hierarchical. So we usually tell people, you do this, you do this, you do this. And even in the language itself, it's more command-based. And so for especially those in administrative positions, they tend to use a command type of language. So when they are in an international environment, working with Americans, and using English, which is the second language for Asian people usually, when they write an email, they would say, "I think you should do this. I think you should do this." They like to use the word should. So when I was interviewing with Duracell engineers, and this one gentleman from Southern California, from South Carolina, he said, "Dr. Gao, I'm a Southern gentleman." He said, "Nobody ever in my life has told me you should do this or you should do that." Americans would say, "If I were you, I would. In my opinion, or I suggest you to do this." Even when I tell my students, I say, "If I were you, I would I would ask you to turn in your homework in time." You know, so Americans more of a style of communications have courtesy, versus Asians are more command. And that can create problems. Americans feel offended if we speak English as a second language in a way that kind of offends them. And the differences in connotations for the same concept. For example, here in America, you know, the Asian people, we're commanding English, and that's the second language for us, for most people. Except for our Indian friends, right? You're born to speak English. But even so, for the same concept, we have different connotations. For example, in America, when I say lunch, what do you think of? Usually it's a sandwich or a salad, right?
Or who pays for it?
Who pays for it? Like today, we had good lunch, right? We buy bad food. But in China, if we had say lunch, sometimes it's a hot pot with a whole fish, swimming in a pot. And that is lunch for them. So this word lunch means different things for different people. And in a merger and acquisition case, if we're all using English and we're using the same language, but in fact means totally different things and cause miscommunication. Competitive versus obliging conflict management style. As you know, we Asian people, we like to be, we don't want to cause any confrontation. We don't want to cause any problem. That's why Asian people are called model minority. So because we don't want to cause any problem, we usually, in a conflict situation, we take obliging conflict management style. But this American conflict management style is more competitive, and that causes problems. And lastly, the US, according to all of you, especially lawyers, are rule-based society. Versus in Asia, it's more of a goodwill-based society. So in America, once you sign a contract, you say that's the end of negotiation. But in Asia, once you sign a contract, you're like, this is the beginning of negotiation. We're going to negotiate this contract now in goodwill because now we have trust with each other. We already signed the contract. That's it. Thank you so much.
So,
Let me make
yeah,
one.
sure.